I'm here to talk about interpersonal communication and how it relates to the local Freight House Farmers Market I attended here in Davenport, Iowa. John Stewart, author of Bridges Not Walls, defines interpersonal communication as the type or kind of communication that happens when people involved talk and listen in ways that maximize the presence of the personal. With that being said, interpersonal communication is highly important due to the ability it grants two or more people when sharing thoughts, ideas, and concerns. After doing extensive research on interpersonal communication, I realized that interpersonal communication is something that we use on a daily basis and that we're going to use forever. And I found many different credible sources for this presentation, and those included John Stewart, Sean Wright, Concordia University, and our very own Joseph DeVito, which is the author of our textbook. And all of these sources provided high quality information on interpersonal communication. So, the main points I'm going to cover are I will discuss the four main components of interpersonal communication. Second, I will explain different nonverbal messages communicated between the vendors and myself. Third, I will discuss the conversation messages and how they apply to our everyday lives. So, first, I'm going to enlighten you on the four main components of interpersonal communication. So, the four main components of interpersonal communication. Interpersonal communication includes the sender, message, channel, and receiver. So, using the Freight House Farmers Market as an example, I would be the sender, the vendor would be the receiver, the channel would be our face to face conversation, and then the message would be anything I asked them. So, maybe I asked them, how long have they been here at the local farmers market? How long have you had your farm? What kind of produce do you sell? Anything like that. So then there are also roadblocks to interpersonal communication. So Concordia University mentions noise interrupts the sending and interpretation of sender's message. There can be physical noise such as fire alarms, bells, loud trucks, planes, etc. And so, for example, when I was at the Freight House Farmers Market, there were a lot of different noises in the background. Some noises that I considered to be interrupting were birds, local traffic, and then there was actually a car alarm going off in the parking lot to the right of the farmers market. So those would all be considered physical noise. So next I will be talking about the nonverbal messages I came into contact with at the local farmers market. Nonverbal messages communicated between the vendors and myself. There are different channels of nonverbal messages. So one of the nonverbal messages that are commonly used is eye contact. Joseph DeVito mentions, with eye contact, you can send a variety of different messages. For example, while I was at the farmer's market, I realized that these people are obviously there to sell their produce, make money, and promote their business. So, if I'm standing in front of someone's display, obviously they're going to spark up a conversation, say, hi, how are you doing? Tell me about their produce, all of that information. So obviously, if I'm showing them eye contact, that shows I'm kind of interested in being respectful, and obviously, I'm probably going to end up buying something. So more examples of nonverbal messages between the vendor and myself include the opposite of eye contact, so eye avoidance. Joseph DeVito mentions eye avoidance can signal lack of interest in a person, convo, or visual stimulus. So, for example, when I got to the farmer's market, I kind of stayed in the center of the parking lot and walked around to observe everything that was going on before I kind of went to an individual vendor. So, I avoided eye contact with the majority of the vendors until I found something that caught my eye. So I proceeded towards Oak Hill Acres, which caught my eye, and I asked the guy questions, and actually ended up buying honey as a gift for one of my friends. And so finally, I'll be discussing the conversation messages. Conversation messages and how they apply to our everyday lives. Joseph DeVito mentions small talk is a politeness strategy and a bit more extensive way of saying hello as you pass someone in the hallway. So, for example, I spoke to Sean, the owner of Hollow Maple Farms, and we had a small talk conversation about where his farm was located, what he sold, and how often he was at the farmer's market. This conversation would be considered small talk. And so Sean had mentioned that he is out there selling produce unless it is 25 degrees Celsius or under. So examples of conversation messages also are a compliment. So a compliment is a message of praise, flattery, or congratulations, says Joseph DeVito. For example, at the farmer's market during my convo with Sean, once he had mentioned that he was out there unless it was under 25 degrees Celsius, I thought that was pretty incredible and like really dedicated to his farm. So I had complimented him and I praised him for working hard and promoting his farm every Saturday, 8 to 1 at the local farmer's market. And my words spoken were real, honest, and genuine, and I'm sure he received that vibe when I had mentioned what I said to him. So, overall, the main points I covered were four main components of interpersonal communication: different nonverbal messages between the vendor and myself, conversation messages, and how these apply to everyday life. And so, overall, interpersonal communication is highly important due to the ability it grants two or more people when sharing their thoughts, ideas, and concerns. Stephen Kovoy once said, "Most people do not listen with the intent to understand. Most people listen with the intent to reply." Thanks for listening, guys.